Well, welcome back to the Pastor Pod. We're so glad you've taken some time to jump in with us. If you are new to the Pastor Pod, my name is Josh. I'm a pastor in Venice, Florida at the Bridge Church, and I'm here with my good friend Jay, who's a pastor up in Metro West Boston at Milestone Church. Jay, man, so glad you're with us.
Yes, good to be here as usual, Josh. Good to spend some time with you. I really enjoy our time together each week. It's fun. It's encouraging. I walk away with really inspired and encouraged each and every week. So
Same here, buddy.
good to be here. Good to be here. I'm glad for, I'm thankful for those that are joining us and are faithful, listeners each and every week who listen. And sometimes they'll give us some good feedback. Sometimes they'll poke at us if we say something like the other week when I said something about my kids. My mom, shout out to my mom. She jumped on me about saying, hey, your kids are not animals or something like that. So anyhow, yeah. So
Shout
Josh,
out.
how is your family? How's Cassidy and the kids, and how's life on the island?
We're doing good, man. I mean, I don't live on the island. I have to tell Jay that every week. Venice Beach is a man-made island. If you are into history, you can go look it up. But it's a wonderful place, wonderful people. The kids are in school. They're enjoying it. Mike and Hannah are our two oldest. They both just came home with straight A's for the first quarter, so we're really excited about that. And they received all their abilities from their mother. I'll just go on record. That's Cassidy coming through. But we just started basketball, so I'm helping coach both kids with a couple other people in our church. So I'm kind of like an assistant coach, supporter. I'm like the guy that makes them run sprints, because I love to see them in pain.
How do you like being an assistant?
I love it because I'm able to be there to encourage, and basically I'm like the hammer. I have a good friend of mine who's he's rather large. He's like 6'7", looks like he's a huge bodybuilder. But he's also a gentle giant, great friend. But like last night I had him running sprints, and it was awesome because, most kids down in this area don't play basketball. It's not the top sport in this area. I would say baseball, volleyball, football is king, but basketball is kind of like way down the list.
Baseball, basketball, baseball, volleyball, football, that order?
Maybe. I mean, it depends, like whatever sport the kid plays, but Venice High School just won the state championship in 8A in Florida. So, I mean, it's like a powerhouse, and baseball, they're awesome. Volleyball and other sports too. But basketball is kind of like, it's here, but it's just not that big of a deal. And I grew up in a basketball family playing basketball with my three brothers. And so I'm always like rooting for basketball to have more validity, so we're having fun teaching kids how to play. And so, yeah, I've been spending a lot of time doing that. And it's also a way for me to just get to know people in the community and get outside the church bubble.
Yes. We had a really cool interaction where my daughter plays travel softball, and her coach pulled her aside asking her about her faith the other day. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And then we basketball. I've coached basketball, but none of my kids play basketball. I'm taking one of my kids. I scored some sweet tickets to the Garden to watch the Celtics play later this month.
Oh,
and
that's
so
awesome.
I'm pretty excited about that. We're 10 rows from center court.
What?
Yeah, like really cool.
Who are they playing?
Really cool seats. Dallas.
Oh, you're gonna get to watch some good basketball.
I hope so. I don't know. I can watch it. It's not really the sport I enjoy, but hey, it'll be all right. So, good. Well,
stuff.
Thanks for sharing about your family, Josh, catching us up today on the podcast. We're going to be talking about membership, why church membership matters, doesn't matter. Fun topic coming from a couple of pastors who are both have church planting in their background, both been at large churches and at smaller churches. We've been youth pastors at churches, and we've seen it all. I feel like we've seen lots and lots of different things when it comes to membership. So it's going to be a great conversation. If you would just hang tight for just one moment, we'll be right back with that conversation. Why does church membership matter? All right, welcome back to the Pastor Pod. And again, does church membership matter? Does membership matter in the church? Josh, great topic. Looking forward to really having a good conversation about membership, because I'm sure at a church there in Venice, and your church is a little bit more established, even though you guys are still set up, tear down. We've talked about that. Then Milestone. But what does membership look like and things like that? So we've talked a lot about online church and the future of church and what implications that has, but we really haven't gotten to the idea of like, what does that really mean for membership? And so I think the best place to start when it comes to church membership is let's get a playing field. In other words, some boundaries, some guardrails up of let's define church membership. And so, Josh, give us some thoughts on church membership. Obviously, we can go to the Bible here. We can get some great direction there, but kick us off. Let's define what church membership is. That way we can set the course for the rest of the conversation.
Yeah. So the word membership, I think, is so just loaded, and
I don't
everybody.
use it.
Yeah. I mean, the word, if I say to you membership, my mind typically goes to like a pool or golf membership, or maybe like a Costco membership or something
Disney
like, just
Plus.
Yeah, Disney Plus, those aren't
Netflix.
bad things, but they kind of represent like I pay a fee and I receive services.
Correct.
And if they don't work out, I'm going to complain, or the pool wasn't open when I wanted to go, or something like that. So when I say membership, I hope everyone knows the definition that I would give to it is that you are saying we are a committed group of people together for the sake of the gospel. So we are the Bible says we're members of one body. We're one flock. We're one body. There's all these different analogies of the church. The church is a flock. It's a body. It's not an organization. It's not a what's the word? It's an organism. It's not just a organization that just functions like a business, but it actually revolves relationships, and it's a life on life, living in community, serving one another and serving the world. And ultimately, Jesus died for his bride, the church. And so the church is a flawed group of forgiven people like me, like you, like everyone else listening in. And so there's no perfect church to join or become a member of, or I think you've used the phrase partner. Is that right, Jay? What you guys use up there?
That's what we use here at Arch. We don't call membership because membership comes with all that baggage. Yeah. And we were like, let's define it a little bit different to where even our language matters. It communicates differently what we're trying to accomplish. I've heard churches that use family. So they have this category of like, you're part of the family. Because again, it kind of relates to what you would read in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, where Paul's talking about the body and things of that sort. So that being said, we use the word partner is what we use. What do you use it to define membership at Bridge?
We talk a lot about covenant membership. That's the heart of the gospel is a covenant. between God. Yeah. Now that can scare people too. Like, oh gosh, is this like a cult? Like, is this a do I have to be a member of your church like for 50 years? And that's not true.
Sign on the line.
No, we definitely have a whole process we invite people to go through, which is our starting point class, which is where I teach our mission, vision, values, and our beliefs. And I take questions from people, a lot of really interesting questions. And then our growth path is 3 classes that we teach: spiritual growth. What does it mean to actively be a part of the church? What does it mean to know your spiritual giftedness? And then our last class is how do you live on mission, sharing your faith. This is nothing really that radical or different than probably most churches.
Right.
But what I want people to know is, what does the Bible teach everybody to know about what it means to actively be part of a local church, to be committed, to be a member, to be in community? And also, what's our mission? What's the goal of the church? Is the goal of the church just to be a place to hang out with people and just have a circle and you basically turn inward? Or is the church a family that loves one another, sacrifices for one another, is generous with one another, but also is on mission together? And so there's kind of that, we want to teach it through that process, through those classes, but also there's circles that they're in during that time where they get to know people. And we've started small groups out of that group, which has been cool.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we ask them to covenant with us to say, hey, based on what we've gone over, like, this is what we're going to do for you, like as a staff, as pastors, as elders. We want to do this. We want to provide this to support you and your family. And then we're going to ask you to participate in the way God's laid on your heart to be using your spiritual gifts, giving, serving, going, planting church, whatever this, going on mission trips. We want them to know what it means to be actively a part of a church. So.
Right. I think when you look at scripture, again, we're trying to define membership. what it looks like. And there's been, there's some that would argue that the Bible really doesn't talk about membership. They talk about being part of the church, and we're part of the church. And there's truth to that. There is a global church, the bride of Christ, which is every believer, which we are all part of that church. But then there are local expressions of the church, local entities of the church. You see that all throughout the New Testament, where you have the different local churches in different regions, different areas. Paul's writing letters to these churches, for example. I think one of the most beautiful pictures you get of the church and the purpose of the church, and it can be applied both globally, but also very much locally, is what Paul describes there in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, starting in verse 12, I believe. And he talks about the aspect of the body. It's there, the hand can't say to the foot, yada, yada. I say yada, yada. I'm sorry. This is God's word we're talking about. That's not what I meant. Don't judge me. But what I'm getting at is it's this expression that we all have a part to play in the local body, in the body of Christ. And that is where, when we work unified together as one body, we can accomplish a lot. But yet, if you're disconnected from the body as a believer, you're going to be flopping around there, because you're missing key aspects, right? I'm not supposed to be everything. I'm supposed to be a part of that body. And that's the local expression of the church body. And that reason we use partner is it brings this beautiful piece to it that says we're covenanting. We use the word covenant as well. It's a partner covenant, but it's a partnership that we have together where we're saying, hey, look, we're committed to one another. We're committed to Christ, and we're committed to one another. And it's those partners that are going to be there through the thick of the good times and the bad times. It's the partners that you can call and say, hey, listen, this is an urgent. We're in need. Whereas the people who come every Sunday who have not entered into that partnership, they're not near as invested. There's also accountability that takes place with a partnership. Like, I can hold you accountable, right? We can hold one another accountable. You hold me accountable. I hold you accountable. You're giving me a right to speak into your life. I'm giving you a right to speak into my life.
That's right.
That happens in a body. That happens in a family.
It does.
Right. And so that is the beautiful picture of the local church, the church, as we talk about when it comes to membership, partnership, family, covenant that we're talking about. So Josh, that leads me to this idea, though, is like, so what do you think are the big hindrance, the big things that, stand in the way of helping people to say, yeah, I'm going to be a part of this church family as a member or a partner or whatever you call it. I know I have good friends here in New England. We really wrestle with it. I think there's a tension point. I have good friends of mine, some of my best friends. Holly and I go out with them. We hang out with them. If they're listening, I love you. We've had these conversations, but like, they're not partners at the church. They're not quote unquote members of our church. So, what do you think some of the big barriers are, some of the big hindrances? I've had lots of conversations, but I'd be curious what you understand as some of the big challenges that come in and affect people and stop them, cause them to struggle with membership.
Yeah, I don't think that this is a legalistic, legalistic thing, or it should be an essential of the faith that you've got to have this card and this perfect covenant statement. That's not really the intention.
You don't have cards?
We do, but we tell them, like, this is just a way to say I'm in, because but I've had people that have a
card. I'm joking. I don't have a card. Do you have a card?
No, like at the end of the class, we have like where they can let us know that they're in. And
that was a horrible joke, man. I was talking about a membership card. Like,
not like a key card.
You weren't even following me. You weren't.
No, I'm not on your wavelength,
it's
man.
It's a fob.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. Not like at my neighborhood where you have to like get into certain, like you have to go to like the little pool. You have to have a little card to open the door or whatever.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. I think there's a lot of reasons. I think a couple could be, we like to have options and people don't like to commit. And I think that's part of our culture in America. The craziness of everybody moving, which I know there's lots of reasons why that is. Church hopping is big. People go to, one church on Wednesday night for this deal, and then they go here on Friday night for this, and then they go to our church maybe on Sunday.
And I don't have a la carte, like, hey,
yeah, it's almost like, I'm going to put it together, just nice, like buffet. I don't have a problem with it. I just don't know how you keep up with serving and really connecting with people when you're spread thin. But then the whole church shopping is prevalent, where people go with a mentality to receive and not participate. And I think that's a negative of the membership mindset, because if every church in America opened up their quote unquote membership or partnership or whatever they call it, I guarantee you, and even at our church, I'm sure it's the same. Majority of the people that have quote unquote members from years and years ago that are no longer even in the state are listed as members, but they're not actively participating. So those are different reasons I think people struggle to really dive in. But I do think a lot of people date the church and they're not committed to the local church. And I mentioned that last Sunday during my message. I was really kind of finishing up our 21 days of prayer, and I kind of made the comment. I said, I'm praying for those of you that really believe this is where God's called you to serve and give and go and make disciples. That you would commit. You would say, "Hey, I'm gonna go all in." And if it's not here, I pray you will find a Bible believing, Jesus loving church where you can give your life away for the sake of the gospel. And people seem to really respond to that, like not necessarily verbally, but I felt like that was a strong thing to say, because so many people are kind of like, I don't know if you feel this way, Jay, but they're just kind of like grading the church every week, and they're like waiting for you to do something they don't like, and then they're ready to take off.
Do you
Now,
feel
if
that way sometimes?
sometimes, yeah, or it's not even a biblical thing, or it's not even a theological thing. It's like a preference thing, and I think that's a struggle across the American church. We've taken non-essentials and made them essentials.
Interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned words like hopping, shopping, all those different words.
Dating the church.
Dating, yep. Yeah, dating, shopping, hopping. All those words that we would understand.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I find is I think there's sometimes not a definition of what it means, and because there's not a clear definition of what it means, people are like, well, why do I need to do it then?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I know I need to be a member of the pool to get into the pool, or I know why. There's reasons behind that, right? Not just for the services, but I understand that. And I think there's clear, you mentioned earlier, there's churches that probably, if they go look at their lists, they probably have members that they don't even live there.
Right.
I've been at churches where we've like, oh, that person passed away, kind of concept. And they're just on their name on a list versus like, there's an active role they're playing. And so at Milestone, again, you classify it, your time, your talents, and your treasure.
Mm-hmm.
So, we expect you to give your time. We expect you to be attending regularly. We don't define that. What does regularly mean? I get it. That's a whole different podcast. Right. But it's regularly. We attend regularly. Community group, being active, regular attender. Your talents, we expect you to serve. We want you to be a part of something, serving somewhere. And then your treasure, we expect you to give. And we hold our members accountable to that. Now, I don't know about our membership is not like everybody who comes to the church gets thrown into this pile. We're like, hey, if you're going to run, we actually ask people like, hey, this is a step you want to take. We do a thing called Discover, just like you. And you discover. And then from there, we say, if you want to take the next step, let us know. Otherwise, we kind of leave you alone. We mention membership all the time, partnership all the time. But we kind of guard it and go, hey, we want to make sure the people who are partners with us understand what that means and are actively participating as partners. So we regularly run lists. We regularly run reports of going, hey, are our partners in community with one another? If they're not, this is a great opportunity for us to do some shepherding. What's going on? What's happening? Are you okay? Is everything okay in life? And again, there's seasons where sometimes a partner may not be in a community group, but it's a season, and we're there walking alongside of them because it's a tough season for them, but it's not a regular thing in their life. They're going to be back in a community group, and we run these reports and say, hey, how can we check on it's a way of managing the flock that God is giving, the shepherding that you're doing. So that's one of the things. But I think when it comes to struggling for church membership, one of the things that I believe is just that defining moment of like, why? What's the purpose? Can I come to, and the truth is, the answer to this is almost yes. Can I come to your church?
Yep.
Can I serve at your church? Can I give to your church? The answer is you could be a partner. You don't have to be a partner in Milestone to do any of those three things.
Sure.
Yeah. We have areas where you can serve and you're not a partner. Now, there are things that we do at Milestone you can't serve in unless you are a partner. And usually it has to do with theology. It has to do with things of that sort, because you need to agree with our
Right.
our biblical,
Yeah.
our,
Yeah.
our beliefs in order to do those things. So to teach in kids to do things like that, you have to be a partner at Milestone.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think those that struggle with membership at the end of the day, I had a friend of mine, and similar to what you shared, we hung out. He couldn't sign the card because he felt like it was a legal binding document and had a real struggle with it. I said, at the end of the day, if you're serving, giving, going, faithfully participating, I said, that's the key of membership. I'm not gonna mince this issue, but at the end of the day, I mean, are you all in or are you not? Are you committed to your local church or not? And if there's a question there, of what like what you just mentioned, that you are that you're actively participating, you're serving, you're giving, you're going for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of the city that you live in, it should be a no-brainer to say, hey, I'm all in. I'm going to be a member. I'm going to be a partner. Hey, listen, because of what Christ has done in my life, because I love the bride of Christ, because we know God's called us here. I have a peace. I agree with the beliefs of our church. And they're not always going to agree on every little thing that's theological or non-essential. That's not what I'm saying. But you're like, hey, listen, I'm here to serve. I'm here to participate. Then I don't think there should be a lot of confusion amongst people to become a partner or a member of that church. And if there's other reasons, they'll bring it up. But at the end of the day, wherever God's planted my family, we're going to be actively participating, serving, giving, going with my local family for God's glory. And so I'm not going to be half-hearted in that. I'm going to be all in.
I think there's one thing that I can't not speak and say. There's
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I believe is one of the number one. It's got to be one of the top 5
Mm-hmm.
struggles for why people struggle with church membership, partnership, family,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to call it. And I think it's the level of accountability.
Mm.
Because I can tell you from all of my conversations, that's the number one thing that there's a little bit of like, oh, is this level of accountability? Because we
Mm-hmm.
tell people, hey, we're going to check on you.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to ask if you're not in community, why you're not in community. We're not asking because it's legalistic. We're not asking because we want you to check a box. We're asking because we care.
Yeah.
And typically, if you're out of, if you're out of a relationship with the church, it indicates typically a lot of times your relationship with God is not also in the same. It's kind of in a shamble.
Yeah.
It could be in a shamble. Same thing if you're not giving if you're not giving, there could also be an indicator that something's going on in your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So
I think there's this.
Our hearts follow what we put our money, time, and like you said,
Right.
time, talent, treasure.
There's a level of accountability that I think people struggle with because we don't like to being told.
That's
we don't
good
like
truth.
being held accountable for our actions, for the way we live our lives. And I think that's the biggest thing is when people are like, well, you're going to hold me accountable for my time, my talent, my treasure. I'm not sure I like that. So I'll come and I'll serve, I'll give, I'll do all these things. But if I stop, I don't want anybody checking up on me and telling me, hey, why'd you stop, or asking why I stopped. I just want to be able to stop. So it's that level of accountability that I believe we struggle with. And because I think that's the number one thing that comes with partnership. And I think it's for me as well. Yeah. I love when people push back and give me accountability. We need that in life.
Because we need that in a spirit-led way, not a legalistic, domineering, hey, you better do these things. And that should never be the spirit of how this is, how this process works and how this relationship works, because that's the calling of the local church, is to say, listen, we're going to do this together for God's glory. And
the author of Hebrews, let us think of ways that we can motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Okay.
Yep.
Or another, NIV says it this way: let us consider how we may spur one another on towards the love of good deeds. It's this, we're supposed to be stirring one another, spurring one another, encouraging one another. And that happens through accountability. If there's nobody saying, pushing me, then I'm going to stop at whatever level I want to stop at. I want people pushing me. I'm eager for that accountability, but I think that's where it struggle. I think that's it's got to be up there, the top 5 struggles. And so how about this? I'd love to hear from our listeners. Maybe you're listening and you're like, I have really struggled with membership. What is it that struggles? Again, no judgment at all. None at all. I'd really like to know, and I'd like to have a good conversation about that. I'd love some follow-up and some feedback about what is the tension point? What stands in the way? Because these are just my assumptions. I'm just one pastor. I'm not speaking for all pastors who believe that accountability is one of those. I'm just speaking for me. I believe it's in the top 5. I'm just one pastor, but I'd love to know what are some of the barriers that hinder people from making that plunge of being all in,
Yeah.
as you said, and saying, hey, I'm committed,
Yeah.
I'm in. What is it?
Mhm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
if it's not accountability, or if it's not a legal, feeling like it's legalistic, what is it?
Mhm.
Because I think that could encourage not only you and I, but that could encourage a lot of pastors if we can get to the bottom
Mhm.
of what that is and begin the process of understanding so we can overcome
Mhm.
it.
I think too, Jay, I think another reason people struggle with membership or going all in is they don't trust, they don't necessarily trust how the money's used, or what is the process of that. And then some people just question institutions. There's been so many leaders, pastors, I mean, businesses that have misused people, abused people. So there's that too. And I think that's hanging around the background as well. That is
Well,
this
I think
church legitimate? Is this pastor living for the Lord? Does he have character and integrity? If I give of my time, talent, treasure, is it going to be used in a
but
godly way? So
but
that's
see,
another one I think that's not spoken as much,
I
but I think it's
agree. I
there.
agree with what you're saying. No, I agree with you what you're saying, because I've even said that to some of our partners. I was like, hey, so if there's a reason why if you don't trust the
Hmm.
leadership, then we want to get to, again, that's where as Christians
Yeah.
we need above this. We need to have the conversations. Let's not,
Hmm.
hey, I don't know if I can trust them, so
Yep.
I'm not going to do this or that, or I'm not going to trust
Hmm.
them. No, we need to have those conversations. And I tell people all the time, partners at Milestone have the greatest voice. We're elder led church, so we
Hmm.
don't have committees and things like that. But our
Hmm.
partners, they are the ones that approve the budget. So
Hmm.
anything that we're going to spend money wise, you have to approve it. Our elders manage the budget. So therefore, after it's been approved and you said this is what we can spend, it's managed by the elders. So we're just managing what the partners
Yeah.
have actually approved.
Hmm.
Another thing our partners have to do at Milestone is you have to approve the elders. We can't
Hmm.
have an elder who's managing the money unless you approve the elder. And
Right.
so again, those partners really do have a huge play in
Hmm.
the overall organization of the church
It's
and
good.
the way the church operates. And so
Hmm.
I get the trust, but at the same time,
Hmm.
maybe it's a season where you go, okay, let me learn a little about the church, but eventually
Yeah.
you either have to trust or you don't trust, one of the two.
That's right.
And
Hmm.
I agree it's up there as well. I think the trust, again, the church
Hmm.
has, unfortunately, the church has its negative stories
Yep.
that often outweigh and are shine brighter than our good stories of
Hmm.
what takes place. And so yeah, I think there's some struggles there, there's some tension there, and I don't know the answers, but again, I'd love to hear from leaders. They can drop in a post, they can comment on something, they can email us at thepastorpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you guys, especially on this topic of church membership. And so, Josh, you said something earlier I think that is really important that I want to touch base on. You said, they should be a part of a local church, and I want to highlight the
Hmm.
word local, because
Hmm.
again, church can be church wide, and there's a lot of people who take that stance of I'm part of the
Hmm.
church. I can
Right.
go anywhere. Well, I'm part of the church. I
Yeah.
am a member of the church because of what
Hmm.
I've committed my life to Christ, and to an extent, that is a true statement.
Yes.
It's a true statement. You are a part of the church, the big part
Yes.
of the body. So then what is the argument? Why would we say the local church matters? Why does the
I would
local church matter?
say, find me an example in the New Testament where a Christian is not part of an active local church.
Okay, I wanted there to be silence because
Yeah.
I don't know if you can,
So we're getting
Josh.
ready to start the book of Acts at our church, and I'm loving it. It's challenging, encouraging. But like Antioch is where like the churches were launched. I mean, through ordinary people, and the Church of Rome, and all throughout the known world at the time. And it was always planted through local churches in those cities that they sent people out on church planting missionary journeys. And so I think it just on a very, very foundational level. Um, yes, are we part of the Big C church as a Christian? Absolutely. But who a part of that Big C church knows you, keeps you accountable, knows how to pray for you, knows what your needs are, knows what you need help with coming out of, knows the sin struggles you have, knows the areas that you need God's help in. That's where the true church comes out. Because I believe, and I've heard it said, and I think some probably won't agree with this, but that's okay, that a Christian without a church home is a spiritual orphan. That although they're loved, they're adopted by the King, without the local body of Christ, which is what Jesus set up, is his idea, will never become truly all that God wants us to be. And so I just really want to I guess, lean into that, because we need to be united in every city, every local community, every neighborhood, wherever there's a church, to be united together on mission, committed to serve one another, serve each other, make a difference. And I think if we do that, God's going to use that, versus just people that are isolated, um, doing life on their own. And we're in that season as a world. I mean, we're in an isolated, fear-based culture right now. People are scared, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're divided, and the church should be that place and that people that they belong to. And so I always tell our church, the church is not just a place I go, it's a people I belong to. And belonging in the local church is what is the answer to most of the existential questions, and the greatest felt needs, and the greatest, hurts that they have, can be found in those loving, imperfect but forgiving, grace-filled relationships. And that's it's more about what we want for people than what we want them to do for us as pastors. Like, we want that for every family, every marriage, to be in a community, you know, being encouraged, living out the gospel together. And at the end of the day, that's really what I would say membership. That's why it matters, is because you're saying, I'm in, I'm committed. I'm not just going to be halfway in.
Right. It's that local expression of the Big C church
Mm-hmm.
that you have in every community, and you see it. I mean, I have to can't argue what you're saying. You look through the book of Acts, if you look at Paul's letters, they're written to individual churches.
Mm-hmm.
There's churches that are birthed that are dealing with certain things in their community, unique to their community. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So Natick is a unique community where Milestone resides. Wellesley is a unique community where Milestone resides. These are two communities, but even Natick to Wellesley is completely different. Venice to, I don't know, what's your neighboring city or
Yeah,
town?
Sarasota, Tampa,
Sarasota.
Fort Myers.
There's similarities, but there's probably differences too. And there should be a local expression of the
Mm-hmm.
church there that exists in that community for that community. Right.
Mm-hmm.
We go to school together. We live together. It's encouraging when, your kids can go to church and see other kids from their school that are also in that.
Mm-hmm.
That's encouraging for our faith.
Yes.
That strengthens
Yes.
our faith. Then they go to public school and they see their Christian friends at the public. There's a stance we can take. There's encouraging. We've locked arms
Mm-hmm.
together. It is that encouraging piece of the local expression in a community. And so, I actually like what we're seeing a little bit more often now, is you see the church at, whatever it may
Mm-hmm.
be, as now that's what we're naming churches. I kind of dig it because of the fact of, that's what it is. It's the church,
Mm-hmm.
the capital C church at this community or this town.
Yep.
I'm not saying everybody should change their name, but what I'm getting at is I'm digging it. When I hear a church say, I'm like, all right, I can get behind that, because that's exactly what we see in scripture. Is the church at Corinth, the church. Yeah, we see this.
Yes.
This is the local expression of the church in your community, and you should be a part of that local church for the purpose of encouraging, stirring one another, motivating one another, strengthening one another's. We are stronger together than we are separate. Go back to where we started, 1 Corinthians chapter 12. We are stronger together. If I'm meant to be a hand and I am disconnected from the body, I'm not really going to function at my full capacity unless I'm connected to the arm, which is connected to the shoulder, which is connected to the torso. Don't get me. I don't know anatomy, but you see what I'm saying? It's just, we're all connected. We all have a part to play. And here's the thing is, when you're not doing it, when you're not playing your part, I think there's some level that we need to understand that we are actually hurting the church more than we're helping the church.
Yeah. When you're not using your gifts, man, it leaves an emptiness in every church. And God has wired and gifted every follower of Jesus Christ spiritually, with personality, with all types of gifts in the community. And so it's more about the vision of the church as a movement of people gathered around the mission of Jesus. And so, yes, do we commit to be together on Sunday and during the week and be in small groups and serve our neighbors? But it's this joy that happens through the Holy Spirit of God when we're willing to say, I'm committed. I'm going to commit myself to one another, that I'm going to serve, help, care for each person in my life. And as we do that together, we point people to Jesus, because what did Jesus talk about? What did he pray for? He not only did he say love one another because that will prove to the world you're my disciples, but he prayed, unify them, unify them, unify them, because a unified church is what the world desperately needs, because we don't live in a world of unity. And if we can't even say, hey, I'm all in, I'm committed to this church, I mean, we're never going to have unity, and we're not going to have movement. And so movements move. That means you don't just go to church, you are the church, right? I mean, it's just that whole paradigm shift. And I don't know if everybody that sits in church on Sunday has come to that realization that it's not just you need to go do a bunch of stuff, and here's our list of things that you need to do as a member or partner of our church. But listen, here's the opportunity you have to make a kingdom difference in this community for the sake of the gospel, and you get to store treasures in heaven, and we get to encourage you in that. And there's a joy that is involved in that. And so at the end of the day, I love talking about this because it's not a matter of terms and membership or partnership, but it's saying, hey, the local church is God's plan for redeeming the world. Like, we exist to extend his mission.
By the way, it's plan A.
Now I'm preaching, but
it's plan A. It's
not
not plan
plan
B.
A.
It's plan A.
Yeah.
If
He
it
uses
falls,
us, right?
If it
People.
falls, everything else falls, right?
Yeah.
Everything else falls.
And it's unstoppable because God, it's his church, and he will build his church, and all the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So
I would say, actually, you don't like talking about it. You're passionately enjoy talking about it.
And you're the same way. And here's the thing. I want every person to have this, because so many people have had a bad experience, or maybe they grew up where they weren't taught like the biblical model of like a church membership is I'm fully engaged in serving and giving and going, versus just ritualistic religion where I gotta go. I gotta go help with the kids. Oh, I gotta go to small group. Oh, I need to. All right, I'll throw in a $20 bill this week. I got to tip God. It's just this kind of this religious, like, this burden.
Yeah, it's not an obligation. It's an opportunity.
No, it's an opportunity because of the grace and the mercy of Jesus. I get to be a part of his church.
Man, can you imagine what it would look like if every person just really committed all in on a local church? And I tell people, I have the same motto as you. I tell people, I've said it from, a microphone in front of all of our people at Milestone. This may not be your local church. And if it's not, and you don't feel like this is where it needs to be, I'll help you find a local Bible believing church. Let me help you.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I can do, is help you. I want you to be all in on a church. And so, Josh, good conversation. I think there's so much we could keep going. Love to hear from our listeners. Love to, hear how, what your thoughts are on membership. And so we want to encourage you, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Our email is thepastorpod@gmail.com. And Josh, again, this podcasting is only second season for us. We're enjoying the conversation. We want to encourage people to subscribe, share, give us a little review of the podcast. We'd love to get some feedback. We got some good guests coming up next week. Josh, you're going to have two familiar faces to you and I on the podcast. Who's coming with you? You got your worship pastor.
We're going to have a candid and fun conversation with actually Aaron Miller is the worship pastor here at the Bridge, and your worship pastor up there in Boston.
Yeah, Grayson Atkins. And we're going to have a good, fun, open dialogue about, hey, what's the relationship between a pastor and a worship pastor? Because honestly, I have a lot of fun. And I said the other day, and we'll get into it next week. I said, Grayson, I think we've got to the point where you can finish my sentences. It's a good marriage. And so
you're not going to want to miss next week. It's going to be encouraging.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. And so that's next week funny. On the podcast. We've got some good leaders coming up, some great leaders that have already scheduled and committed. We're excited about the next couple months here on the podcast. So you definitely want to subscribe, share. You definitely want to be in on this, and lots of fun things happening in the future. So from Josh and myself from the Pastor Pod, we pray you have a fantastic week, and we hope to see you back here each and every week on